Okay. All right. So, hi, everybody. Welcome to our task force meeting for the month of May. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that we can have a couple more people join in as we continue on with the meeting. But as I just said, we have changed the agenda a little bit, partially because of our what like the people that are in this meeting. So I believe that we're actually a pretty even split between the short term and the long term group. So for Danielle, I'll just quickly explain what each group is working on. The short term team is tackling more short term things. So specifically, they're tackling problem intersections as well as street and pedestrian safety. Those are their main topics and what they're trying to figure out and like figure out solutions for those. For a long-term team, they have been focusing on housing, both the creation and just the current supply of affordable housing, as well as food justice throughout the city. So those two have been the biggest thing that they've brought up. But a lot of things have been brought up and a lot of things have been listed as priorities. But these are the two things that are reoccurring themes. So um, before we get into it, I think what we will end up doing is that Danielle, you'll have some time to talk about what housing stability does, which I never actually mentioned. Danielle she's representing the Housing Stability Office in the city of Boston, so that's what she does. Um, but we will have time for you to speak a little more on that and a quick Q&A session. But for now, do you want to just give everyone a quick intro on what you do?
Sure, definitely. And thank you for having me this evening. Really appreciative and always appreciate Counselor Mejia's sentiments. I often joke that I'd love to take her around to be my hype person. So really appreciate her and the advocacy and the work that she's doing in the community. I'm Danielle Johnson. I'm the director for the Office of Housing Stability here within the City of Boston, the Mayor's Office of Housing. It's one of the six or seven, maybe eight divisions within the Mayor's Office of Housing. We have a neighborhood development division, which focuses on housing production affordability. We have a housing compliance asset management, which focuses on IDP or inclusionary development projects. We have a supportive housing division, which focuses on homeless individuals. We also have a policy development and research team, and they focus on all of the things that have housing components to it. So we have our own data analysts, et cetera. And then we've got other divisions that do just as important work, but are more background, such as IT and operations, et cetera. Happy to talk more about the work that we do within the office, but want to hear from you all in terms of what you're thinking short term and long term for questions that or um, comments that you have that you're looking for response on that I may not be able to answer. I'm happy to take that information back to the team to figure out who would be the best person to answer those questions. I know there's been conversation around affordability, housing stock, some of which I'm familiar with, but I do want to be transparent that some of the questions that you may have, I may not be able to answer outright, and we may need to pull some data and some numbers to make sure that we're being transparent with you all in terms of the numbers. So just wanted to bring that up as well. So thank you for having me.
You for joining us. So we will now uh, so just so that you all know what we're gonna do a quick budget overview because I know that some of you were there last time, but since the budget has been, we are now in the midst of budget season and it is not all, but it is what the council has been spending a good chunk of its time doing. So we will be going over a very quick overview, and I could put the slides in the chat so that you all could look through a little more thoroughly. But, oh, yes, counselor.
Yes, I have a quick question, and I want to just be mindful of Danielle's time with us. So I'm wondering, Danielle, I know I had said to Kara that we'll do a high level budget overview, but my thinking is, why don't we brush off of just kind of like what you just talked about? I can give a little bit of introspective of like how our office has interacted with you and your team, and you know, we
Yeah.
we have I feel like you've triaged so many of our cases. So oftentimes people who are housing insecure or are looking for rental assistance just for first last month's rent, or sometimes folks are in a crisis. And so Danielle and her team have been really helpful at triaging some of those cases and being able to help us plug people into whatever that immediate need is. Now, some of it is, federal programs that are hard for some folks who may not have status. So, we always have to figure out how to be creative and like working with the Boston Public Schools. And so, really kind of helping us navigate the housing crisis cases that come through our office. Danielle has been an incredible thought partner and just like a fierce advocate since the inception of COVID. Um, we've been in deep partnership, which is, yes, I'm going to be your hype woman. And actually, I'm going to say all of this in a video, and you can always just play it everywhere you go, okay? Um, and so, just incredibly grateful for that work. But Kiara, I was thinking maybe we could spend a little bit of time with the task force talking specifically about housing issues before, and then we can then let Danielle have the rest of her evening off. Just I feel like I had an afterthought after that we spoke, and so wanted to honor.
Happy to stay for the full meeting, but I appreciate it. So
Yeah,
I'll defer
I
to
know
you
what
all.
it's like to be in 101 places. So I want to give you your time back because you're being very generous with it. So,
Appreciate
um, so can we open it up? I know we have Dylan and I know Christine. I know those two folks have been talking about housing issues, but since we have a few other members um, from other spaces, let's open it up and get creative and also just name some of the things that you're seeing in your districts. So, Kiara, since I'm driving, I'm gonna have you moderate people, lift their hands up, and all that good stuff. I leave you in charge.
All right, thank you, counselor. So, the time is yours. I know that we have a even split. We have two members from the long-term team, which is Ashley and Christina, and then two from the short term, Charlie and Dylan. But anyone, regardless of which team you are in, is able to ask a question. So, does anyone have any questions?
And it may be helpful for folks because a lot of times in these spaces, people are like, oh, housing, and don't really understand, well, what's housing stability and isn't everything that MOH or Mayor's Office of Housing doing in an effort to sustain housing? So our office, as the counselor mentioned, focuses on housing crisis, which is a big part of our work, but we also try to think through what eviction prevention looks like. So we group our work in three buckets. We have a financial assistance program. So as Counselor Mejia mentioned, if you're someone who's moving or needs to move, we cover first, last, security, hopefully not broker's fees for long, but we do cover that as well. We also have a case management support team. So if someone is in housing crisis, they need to move, but it may not be right away, or they're in a situation where it's DV, domestic violence or community violence. We work with the community to see, well, where can we move this person as quickly as possible from the harm? So we work a lot with the Boston Housing Authority, but we also have partnerships with different major property managements and CDC's community development corporations within Boston, all of them for the most part, Beacon, Wynn, your JP&DC, et cetera. And then we also have a eviction prevention bucket that we work out of as well, which is both upstream and downstream. Downstream is someone receives some sort of notice, eviction notice, and we're partnering with Greater Boston Legal Services to help with the legal aspect of it. Upstream is you've received a notice to quit. It's not at that stage where you're actually in the housing court process. So thinking through, can we reach out to Beacon Properties to say this person owes $2,000, we have a financial assistance program that covers up to $5,000. How can we think creatively so that this non-payment case isn't on this person's record for life, or at least for 4 years? We now have eviction ceiling, which is a huge initiative, which we're also starting to implement within our program ecosystem. But those are the three buckets that we work out of. And then we also work collectively with our other departments within the Mayor's Office of Housing. Some of them I mentioned at the outset. So for homeless individuals, I mentioned our supportive housing division. They run a number of rapid rehousing programs. Those are programs that partner with the local shelters to provide really intensive case management support for individuals who are transitioning out of homelessness as it relates to community development, housing stock. We work with our neighborhood development department. So every development that's created, our office that has funding from the Mayor's Office of Housing. We work with our neighborhood development to think through, well, what does an eviction plan look like? So every development that has funding provided by the Mayor's Office of Housing has this eviction prevention plan, or EPP as we call it, where we really work with the developer to say, if it's a developer who is working primarily with veterans, we want to make sure that we understand that veterans are impacted differently, possibly than a mixed use, mixed development. So we want to make sure that their eviction prevention plan speaks to eviction mitigation efforts for veterans specifically. So we do a lot of hand holding, but also conversation with developers to say, we want to work with you. We know you want to create wealth and whatever else, but we also want to make sure that people are thriving in their communities and can stay in their communities. So that's a little bit of the work that OHS does and how we relate with the other departments within the Mayor's Office of Housing. And I know in previous meetings you've mentioned the Boston Housing Authority. Although we are separate entities, we work very closely with them. Our office actually meets with the Boston Housing Authority every month because a lot of our constituents are in public housing, and we have to recognize that. So we have a good collaboration and partnership with the Housing Authority as well. So just wanted to name that so people have a little bit of grounding of how the Office of Housing Stability fits into the larger ecosystem of housing development within the city.
Thank you, Danielle. Does anyone have any questions?
Or
Questions,
comments?
concerns, comments?
Yeah, or just kind of ideas of things that we may not be thinking about, or other um, emerging crises that, we tend to just handle whatever cases come our way. But sometimes folks who are living in close proximity to folks who are experiencing instability issues that we may have not heard of. Like, I think about young people who are aging out of foster care. I
Yeah.
think of elders um, who their children, now they've downsized and now they don't have a place to, or their children sold the house, and there lots of things can happen. But so, what if you can share just maybe some folks have some ideas or things that we should be on the lookout for, or things like that. We would love to hear from y'all in this case. And I know that Christine, we have a lot of work that we do together. And I know you've been doing some work around the real estate market, and also like additional dwelling units and things of that nature. So potentially you might have um, some questions too in terms of like what can everyday residents do to help support some of the crises that we see as well. So I'll leave it to inspire you all with that.
And I
And I
see
forgot the
that.
home center in my iteration of the departments within the Mayor's Office of Housing. So a huge department, our home center, which works with first-time home buyers and current homeowners. And they run the accessory dwelling unit ADU program out of that division. So thank you for flagging that. I'll stop talking. Ashley, you had your hand up.
Yeah, when you're looking at like resource availability and access and awareness of the resources,
Mhm.
what would you say is like kind of the people who are like making, do you think you're getting all the people who need to get to your office are getting there? Or does there need to be more awareness raised about the resources that are available? And then
Mhm.
on the other side of that question, are the resources abundant enough to address the problem as a whole?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great point, and I think that's something that we struggle with, especially since the pandemic, which has changed a lot of the way people interact with each other. And one of the things that we're thinking about, and there's this huge initiative within the entire mayor's cabinet and mayor's office, is getting City Hall out of City Hall. So there's a lot of different programs. There's a coffee hours, there's Village Vibes, there's other sort of meetings such as this, where you're creating space for people to engage with each other. But we claim, City Hall is right downtown, it's right off the T, but that's not really accessible. And this is actually something it's accessible in that, you can take the T, it's not expensive, you don't have to pay for an Uber. There are marked lines for those who are visually impaired. There's ramps, et cetera. It's accessible in that way. But if you live in Hyde Park and you need to meet to get your birth certificate printed out, or you need to fill out an application, it's not accessible in that way. So we're really thinking of ways where we can immerse ourselves a little bit better in the community. And one way we found that is obviously through the coffee hours and the Village Vibes, et cetera, but also in these spaces where oftentimes we come to meetings such as this or the Boston Public Library, and people are surprised that our office exists. It's like, oh, where is it? Because we're not based in City Hall. So we're actually across the street from City Hall. So there's also that component. So you raise a good point in terms of the accessibility. I do think enough people know, but not a lot of people know. And it's people like Counselor Mejia and Counselor Pepin who just joined, who really connect the community to the city services, which is a huge part of the job. So that's the first answer to your question. And then remind me of your second part of the question.
And the second part was just like the abundance of the resource. So,
Yeah.
in the event that people are and
Yep.
become more aware of
Yep.
these resources, and you get people like kind of using and accessing them,
Right.
Is there enough?
Yeah, it's never enough, right? You think of the cuts that are happening federally; those are also trickling down, obviously, on a state and city level, to the point where, we're talking we're going to be level funded, and that's to say, don't expect any new investments. Work with what you have and hope that you can continue to still service the amount of people that you've been continuing to serve. So that's a real reality that we're grappling with on the city level, but also trying to think, well, how can we be creative? We understand that we only receive X amount of dollars for rental assistance. During COVID, we helped over 2,000 people with rental assistance, and we had $12 million of funds that were utilized versus post-pandemic, post-moratoria, post all of the federal funding that was cut in half. So if you think progressively, where we're past pandemic, past any type of federal funding, really trying to think, okay, we might not be able to provide this person with $10,000 in funding, but if we utilize state resources, if we utilize city resources, and we have conversations with the landlord, or we have conversations with property management, is there a way to chip away at this $10,000 balance that this person owes without having the funds that we actually need to solve the problem, but thinking creatively. And it sounds like this space is meant for that, of thinking, okay, we have rental assistance, but it's not enough. We understand that. What else can we do to help mitigate financial instability within communities? So that's the long and short answer is it's not enough.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your question.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. I just want to highlight that we have been joined by Norm. Hi, Norm. And also Counselor Pippin. Counselor, would you like to say a few words?
Hey everyone, you're getting the real version of me here, no suit on. Both my kids are sick, so I just got home with some Tylenol, and I'm just very thankful that these conversations happen. I was able to hear Danielle speak about the amazing resources that the cities have, and I do got to say that counselors like Mejia and others do a good job of bringing City Hall to City Hall. That's so important and something that I've been trying to do in my first year and a half in office, where that's why my office has been doing Field Fridays in the community. We do after hours too. So like for people that are coming out of work, we're out and about in the weekends, because it's just I've learned that if people don't know that the resources exist, they're not gonna get used. And so I made that a priority of mine. But I'm just glad to be part of this conversation, and I just look forward to be continuing to work with all of you on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I saw that Sarah, Dylan, you had your hand up. Do you still have a question?
I answered my own. Thank you.
Okay. Norm, to catch you up to speed, we're here with Danielle, our housing stability rep, and she's just answering a couple questions that we've had, just about housing in general. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. And this goes to everyone that's here. If anyone has any questions, um, please feel free to raise your hand or unmute, put it in the chat, however you feel most comfortable doing it, and then you can ask Danielle that question.
Well, thank you, Kara. I appreciate that, but I will. But I'm good right now. Sorry for joining late.
You're good. So,
So Danielle, can you tell us how, if folks want to connect with you in the future, because this is how we spread the word, right? This is how we utilize our network. What's the best way for people to plug in? I know that, the once upon a time, emails was the best because you have everything documented, but I know that 311 and there's also other ways to connect people to what they need. So what would be the best way if
Yeah.
there's a constituent case that comes through? How can people connect directly with you or your
Yeah.
office?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of ways to connect. The fastest would be to call us directly, and I'll put our contact information in the chat. You're also welcome to call my cell phone directly, which I'm also happy to put into the chat. We take walk-ins. We're a front-facing office within the Mayor's Office of Housing, meaning we have a hotline that we answer from 9 to 5, and that we take walk-ins. So we encourage people to come to our office even if they don't want to. A lot of times people stumble upon our office because they get directed somewhere else within City Hall, or email. We have a generic email, but I'm also happy to provide my email as well. One thing that I did want to raise, and I don't think I talked enough about this, was related to some of the policy initiatives that we're working on. A lot of our work is very case management focused because a lot of people are unfortunately in crisis. We work a lot, especially when there's a fire in the city or some sort of displacement, which Councillor Pepin and I worked a long time together when he was the director of neighborhood services. But we also try to think upstream of, well, what are some ways that we can mitigate eviction? So if you haven't already, the city recently implemented Mayor's Office of Housing with partnership with our planning department, which was formerly the BPDA, put out this anti-displacement action plan, and they're currently sort of doing listening tours to figure out and sort of roll out the tool of, and I'll share the link that you all can play around in to see where anti-displacement is happening. And the plan is really a set of policies and practices designed to prevent residents, especially those who are low income, senior, longtime residents, from being involuntary forced to leave their homes. So that can happen in a number of ways. So what we're doing on that front is thinking from a eviction prevention standpoint. So we are currently working on a new eviction prevention action plan. The action plan, the first action plan was actually implemented in 2019 under Mayor Walsh. And we're now thinking of, well, it's been almost 10 years. What have we done and where are we going from here? So we're doing a deep dive into where eviction's happening, looking at some of this data that was presented in the anti-displacement tool or risk map, I should say, but also doing community listening sessions to understand what's affecting you most or why are evictions happening in Dorchester, Mattapan, Roxbury, Hyde Park, as opposed to where I live in West Roxbury. So really trying to get a better understanding of targeted approaches as it relates to eviction prevention. So that's two-ish policy pieces that I wanted to bring up that we're working on. And in that, we are also thinking about condo conversion, also talking about Article 80 as well. So a lot of different, more granular policy pieces that our office works on maybe not on a day-to-day basis, such as our policy development and research team. but a lot of times Office of Housing Stability is being considered in those conversations, given that displacement does happen when there's a potentially new development that happens, and really trying to understand, well, what other mitigating factors can we think about when we're thinking about tenants who are potentially being displaced. So wanted to raise that as well, because I think a lot of people think that we are just case management focused, which that's probably 70% of our work. But maybe not 70, but it's a good chunk of our work. But the other piece is thinking through what are some upstream efforts that we can think about policy initiatives to keep people in their homes. So just wanted to name that.
And I have a quick question for you that it just popped up to mind, and I think it's something that would be helpful for everyone here to just think about and just also know for the future, I guess. How do you approach community engagement in these listening sessions? How do you promote them and make them known? And is there anything that you think that could be improved about bringing more people in and letting them know about these resources?
Yeah, that's a great question. For the Eviction Prevention Action Plan, we've created a steering committee, and the steering committee consists of obviously mayor's Office of Housing representatives, but also consists of someone from Wind Management, someone from Boston Housing Authority, someone from Maloney Properties. So really thinking through someone from Greater Boston Legal Services. So really not, or someone from City Life Theta Urbana. So really thinking through who has the most impact in their communities and who touches people the most, understanding that we can't be everywhere. So using our steering committee members to take information that we glean from our meetings to ask specific questions of their community as it relates to eviction prevention. So that's one way that we're doing it. The other way is a more focused approach where we're actually putting a plan together to think, okay, we understand that we aren't omnipresent, so we need to think about creative ways where maybe it's through the anti-displacement working groups, having a representative from the Mayor's Office of Housing Stability come to those groups to say, we're working on an anti-eviction action plan. We'd love to hear your thoughts on X, and getting feedback that way, and so that it informs the action plan itself, so that we can really say we've actually engaged with the community and it's not just word of mouth or lip service. So those are the two ways that I can actively think of that we're engaging with community. But this definitely helps. So happy to talk more in depthly about our eviction action plan as we continue to work through it as time progresses. But thanks for your question.
Does anyone have any more questions? So I saw, Ashley, that you said in the chat that you did have another question. Um, I think we can close off this Q&A with you if you still have that question and would like to ask it.
Yeah, I mean, now the questions kind of developed from all the things that you all have shared. I think I wasn't as like privy to the um I guess we can call it an eviction crisis like in Boston. And I'm wondering because now I'm like looking at a Boston Magazine article, but now I'm all over the place. Uh, just like when we're thinking about who's experiencing eviction and the and also just Boston generally being an unaffordable city. So I can imagine that like people who are being displaced like come from like a broad range of incomes. And how is that being addressed as well? Recognizing that I think there's a likelihood that a lot of people, even if they make a lot of money, are like living at the top of their um income. And then you also have people who may be like kind of like scraping by, but also have access to some of like the community resources and like city resources because of like qualifying factors. So like I guess how is that addressed within this office?
Yeah, that's a great question and something that we are grappling with every day. There was new recent census data that came out that said 42% of Bostonians are cost burden, meaning they pay at least more than 30% of their income. About 20%-ish are like severely cost burdened, so they pay more than half of their rent. So one thing that our office has looked at is housing stability in terms of, is this housing that you are currently living in, is it sustainable long term? There's patchwork that we can do. Or Band-Aid work. We can pay your rent up to a certain amount, but you're still in the same predicament. So really thinking through, well, what are some other strategies that we can use as an addendum to financial assistance? So is that we need to get you connected with workforce development. And I'm not at all saying that if you have a better paying job that you can pay the rent, because the data shows that that may not necessarily be the case. But thinking through workforce development, thinking through budgeting, thinking through credit, and really encouraging people to utilize those city services, because a lot of times people aren't in that space, understandably so. They're trying to figure out, well, how am I going to pay rent next month? And those are difficult conversations that our office is having to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, we want people to remain in Boston. We don't want them to have to move to you name it, Brockton, Lawrence, Lowell, which is where a lot of people are looking because the rents are cheaper. But really encouraging people and giving them that discipline of having conversations with their landlords early on, which is, again, something that we're thinking through in this new iteration of the action plan of, well, what does having a conversation with your landlord really look like when people already have this sort of disconnect of, well, my landlord just cares about the money and that's it. And if I don't have the $500 for him today, he's not going to want to hear this conversation. But also on the reverse of that, understanding landlords, right? Because they are a big part of it as well. Not saying that they should give tenants a slack or anything like that. Um, but I do think it's a two-way street of thinking through. It's not just rental assistance. It's not just workforce development. There has to be some sort of symbiotic relationship. But it's something that we struggle with daily in our office, just given a lot of our constituents that we work with are single parents, are hourly employees, so they don't have sick time if a child is sick. That's work that they have to lose out of. And then you have the after effects of that, which is, okay, now you're in the eviction process, and now you have to miss even more work because you have to show up to court. Um, so it's a lot, and I think part of it, even though it sounds simple, is having conversation. We've learned that having bigger property managements in our corner, so like Beacon, for instance, who we check in with weekly. They're really great about, hey, we have this tenant. We haven't been able to communicate with them. Is the city able to step in and just say, we're just looking for a conversation? And we found that oftentimes that helps. Not always, obviously, but in some instances it is helpful. So even that
Do you
initial
have,
conversation
sorry,
is helpful. Yeah.
do you have relationships with other like kind of large rental properties beyond Beacon?
Yeah, so Beacon, Wynn, Maloney, Wingate, you name it. We probably reached out to them. It's part of the work that we do. A lot of these, as developments are being developed within the city, obviously they look for property management companies, and most of them are very centralized in the Boston area. So, yeah.
Is is that something that's public knowledge for tenants? Yeah.
Good point. I do not know if that it's public knowledge. A lot of people know I'm going through this crisis. Some people know, rather, I'm going through this crisis. Let me call this office to see if they can help. But it's not posted anywhere in terms of, if you call this office, they will do this thing.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just thinking about my own experience, like having gone from a landlord who was just like they lived on the main floor of my building
Mhm.
and I lived there for 7 years. The way they shared it was I think my rent only went up $150 in the 7 years that I was living there per
Uh,
person.
Yeah.
Whereas like in the place that I've been living now the last 3 years, it's gone up $150
Mm,
in the last three or almost $200 in the last 3 years. And so
yeah.
when I compare like what my like landlord who like owned their property was like, I think they
Mm,
own maybe two other homes on the block, but they're
mm,
like we raise based on our taxes.
mm,
Uh,
mhm,
and we just want people to be consistent and like they can live here versus here, like
mhm,
it's a management company. My perspective is that they're probably raising it based on how much profit that they can get.
mm,
And I can assume like if other people, I think that's like kind of the sentiment of like a company versus an individual landlord,
mhm,
maybe in some cases. But if you don't have awareness that like your company like maybe has association with the mayor's office and
mhm,
you'd be able to have these conversations around, oh wow, you've raised my rent like X percentage and
mhm,
now it's made it unlivable because you're
mm.
trying to
Yep.
get a profit versus like make it sustainable for people to continue to live.
Yep. Yeah, you raise a good point. We sometimes get emails around my rent's increased. Is this legal? Which we don't have rent control here in Massachusetts. So, what we advise is that they have a conversation, try to negotiate, which I rent, and I often, same situation, have to have that conversation. And a lot of it is doing research as well. I know to do that, but whether you raise a good point of whether other people know to do that, where to look. A lot of times they're looking at the fair market rate of the neighborhood and properties that are nearby. So trying to compare and contrast, it really is a exercise and a negotiation skill that a lot of people don't do. But you raise a good point of um, having those skills sort of broadened across the community so people know that you don't just have to accept this, you can have a conversation despite not having rent control. So thanks for raising that.
This will be my last comment if I can. Um,
Yeah.
is the office allowed to like support tenants unions and like uplift them through the office?
Say more on that.
I don't know much about the ones in my community. I've seen people like kind of share on social media or
Mhm.
like share flyers around, but I do know that there's like kind of a budding tenants union in the Austin Brighton area where I live.
Mhm.
Uh and so is there like for instance if people were to like seek resources and say like I want to be able to like negotiate or advocate, but
Mhm.
feeling like doing that as an individual versus doing that with union backing
Right.
can feel very different. And so
Yeah.
if there's a union behind them to like support them in that negotiation, you know that like other tenants in your community have that like would the city be able to I won't say sponsor unions, but at least say like connect with the local tenants unions. We like list them on our website.
Yeah, so if you remember Fairlawn, one of the ways that the Mayor's Office of Housing was involved was because the tenant union reached out to our office to say, this is not right and we need some help from the city. So we're not, we only work with landlords, we only work with tenants. We are uh, for everyone. So we also work with a lot of co-ops who obviously have a strong tenant union backing. And a lot of times they reach out to our office to say, the board's not doing what they're supposed to do, and we need the city to step in. Obviously, we do an assessment internally to see whether we have any money in the project or whether there's any muscle that we could potentially flex in an effort to try to have or to start a conversation. But yeah, if there are people that aren't getting responses from their landlord, I believe I received an email not too long ago about a small um, union being started in Austin Brighton. But yeah, I would encourage people to reach out to us. Obviously, we're probably not going to post it on our website that we did this thing, but Fairlawn, we were very open about the fact that in perpetuity they have rent control essentially. So, or at least it's affordable housing, I should say. So. Yes, I encourage people to reach out to our office if they need help with forming a union or thinking about, not getting a response, etc. So we're for everyone. So encourage it.
Thank you, Ashley, for your questions. And thank you so much, Danielle, for answering our questions and
Yeah.
being here with us. Um, for our next part of the meeting, we can we will be breaking off instead of doing two breakout rooms since we have a relatively small group today. What we'll end up doing is that I can put on a timer for 20 minutes, 25 minutes around there, and then we will focus on one group. So, for example, I think since we've been talking a lot about housing and housing is what the long-term group has been talking about a lot, I think we'll start off with the first 20 minutes with talking about housing and then food justice. And then after, we will transition to the short-term team with pedestrian safety. And then once we're there, it has been brought up several times by other members who unfortunately couldn't be here today that they wanted to focus on problem intersections. And once we transition over to the short-term team, and their priorities. I will be sharing the problem intersections folder. Actually, I'll put it up now so you guys can click through it, but there are a couple pictures that some members have brought in and some videos about some very troubling things that have been happening in the intersection so that in case you don't pass by them all the time, you can see what their journey is across the city. But I will start my 20-minute timer. Yeah, I'll start it. But this space right now, it's just for you guys to talk. I can try to moderate, but you know, you can unmute, feel free, or put it in the chat. Um, but yeah, I will actually put up. You guys can see my screen?
Taking some time to oh, there it is.
Okay, perfect. All right, so right here. God, it's not there. Hold on, give me 1 second. But I'll pull up our last slideshow so you can see and just look through what we spoke about last time. So these were the big picture items. Based on our conversation that we just had, I think it's something that just came up to mind and it's almost mimicking what the short-term team is doing, but creating some sort of pamphlet or infographic with all of these resources and like the hotlines that Danielle mentioned and all that stuff, creating it into one document and then sharing it with people to make sure that they know that these services are available to them. Do you guys have any thoughts on that or like best ways to do that, or if that's something that you would be interested in pursuing? Just some sort of way to consolidate all this information so that people have it and are able to almost take control of their situations.
When you say like making sure people have access to this information and have control over the situations, are you talking about people who are experiencing like food insecurity, for instance, like they know about places where like a food bank is accessible or where they can go get cheaper groceries and like having those things like listed in a central repository or space?
That is sort of what I had in mind, yes, having that accessible to the people who need it the most, but also just the general public. You don't need to be struggling to know that there are places in the city that you can go to get some to get some food because food is expensive regardless of what your income is, what your situation is. It's just expensive. No one wants to be paying $9, $10 for a dozen eggs. So I think that the way that I was thinking about it was just one central location for all this information. So, for example, for me, I didn't know that the Housing Stability Office existed before this task force. But that's something that I've learned, and that's something that we could share with other people because if I didn't know it, then that means that a lot of people also might have not known it. So that's where my I was thinking. But if you think that there's a better way of going about that, or if that isn't something that you all are interested in thinking about or like talking about, also feel free to share that.
Um, I have a friend who worked at Healthy Boat in Geneva and created a resource for the Family Nurturing Center, and it's essentially like a full resource guide, I think specific to like kind of that um Bowdoin, like that Dorchester neighborhood area that has a list of like a lot of resources. I can share the resource via email because I think I only have it on my phone right now. But I think it sounds similar to what you're describing, Kara.
Yeah, so do you all think that that would be a first step, so to speak? Because just sharing the resources isn't enough to solve the issues, but it's a way, it's like a stepping stone almost. Is that something that you think would be good? And I'm speaking specifically to Ashley and Christina, and I don't mean to call you out, Christina, because you guys are long-term members, but Norm, Charlie, Dylan, please feel free to chime in because housing isn't exclusive to one group or another. It's something that affects all of us. So if you have any 2 cents to share, please feel free.
Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's having a great night so far. Just based on the conversation today, and my experience working in human services prior, I do agree that there is confusion amongst the public about the resources that are available, and also um, just the accessibility of the internet. Some people don't use the internet at all or don't have access to it. So maybe providing the public resources of the library and things like that that can provide those additional resources or any other places, community health centers or things like that, where people may not be online. But additionally, having that one link, one source to find the resources that they need, whether it's housing or food insecurity, would be very helpful because there's a lot of information out there and different. Maybe even a map, like some sort of interactive map, may be helpful because there's a lot of food trucks and fresh food options that are like $2 bags and things like that on certain days at certain health centers, etc. So that's my thought process as I'm hearing this conversation. But I can land there for now.
Yeah, I love that idea of the interactive map. I think that's super engaging and kind of fun. I don't know, that sounds kind of nerdy, but it sounds like a really cool thing that you guys, if you're interested in continuing, that would be awesome. And I know that Dylan, you just said more centers of information, def share. Whoa, sorry about that. More centers of information sharing definitely sounds helpful. So, definitely, I forgot who mentioned this exactly, but libraries, community centers, even community health centers as well. That's a place that a lot of people go to. Just places where just a lot of people go to, or that are just central in the city. That could be it. And I do want to bring this up because it reminded me of all of you guys once I saw it this week. But I received in the mail this, I don't know if you could see it, the summer weather guide. And it's just like a quick little pamphlet just detailing stuff about the summer, how to stay safe, stay hydrated, all of that stuff, cooling centers, mist tents, all that stuff. And I immediately thought of you guys because specifically the short-term team had mentioned this, but now hearing everything that we've talked about during this meeting, I think it's something worth talking about for the long term as well. But the interactive maps definitely do seem like a good way. I know that there are some websites, and I could try to find them and put the links in the chat, but there is, I think it was Fresh Food Truck. They have like not an interactive map, but just a map on their website where they list out where they are in the city. Um, so that's something to think about. But yeah, does anyone else have any questions, comments, concerns, something that they want to bring up?
I just want to say thank you, Kiara. You are like the and Danielle, you're still here, girl. I love that for you right here, right now. That goes to show you could have had your get out of my Zoom pass like an hour ago, and I love that you're still here. That's a lot about you. Um, and we appreciate it. But what I was gonna say, Kiara, just like thank you for all of the enthusiasm that you bring into the space. And I think to the task force, we should do our like that one pager that we share with everybody, that gets designed by the task force that we can print out and share with folks around some of the things that we've been learning and doing. So I think that that is a good exercise for us. So I love the idea and being able to replicate it. You have lots of hands up now, but I'm going to go back on off mute.
Thank you, Counselor. I saw Christina, your hand went up first, and then Dylan, the floor is yours.
Hi. So, one thing that came up for me, on top of the things that I already mentioned, is just the updates on either Project 2025, anything regarding tariffs, anything regarding loss of funds that may impact um, like food banks and things like that that we're talking about now, and the resources that we're going to be losing. Maybe filling in that void there, um, working with other, partnering with other organizations that are doing this work already, and filling in the space there where we're already getting cut, is something that comes to mind for me. And I think I'm good there. I have so many other things and thoughts that came to mind, but I'll just stop there for now.
Well, if you would like, you can also put them in the chat. You can spam us in the chat and, you know, feel free.
Awesome.
But
Thank
that,
you.
yeah, of course. And that just came to mind what you said with the, oh my gosh, now I might forget, the daily table closures. So in case anyone isn't aware, Daily Table is like a supermarket that was very affordable and used by a lot of people because it had um, cheaper food. Like it was a supermarket in places where there was a lot of need for it. And supermarkets, like food is just really expensive. And they made it so that it was accessible to people. And unfortunately, because of federal funds, they did have to close. They're now closing all of their supermarkets in the city, which is very sad. But yeah, thank you so much for bringing up that point, Christina. And I think that with that paired with what Counselor said and what you have mentioned with the interactive maps, I think we can start off with a one pager with all of this information and links and share that with others. And then we can figure out some way forward to address these issues and almost become independent from federal funds, as wild as that sounds. Um, but yeah, that was just something that came up to mind. So, Dylan.
Thanks. It's funny that you said that because my hand was up because I was going to say that the daily table closures were going to leave a really big hole, and I just would like to kick out as an open question whether there's anything that the city can do on the policy end to try to fill in some of the gap that's left. And I don't have any ideas off the top of my head, so I don't have anything brilliant to say. Just an open question.
Thank you for that. I am not the policy expert here, so I will have to defer that open question to Counselor Mejia. Um, so
So,
what, yeah, go ahead, Counselor.
so just so that I'm clear, the question was what else do we have lined up as a result of the closing? Sorry.
More just what can we do to try to fill in some of the gap that's going to be left from this absence in the market.
Yeah. Yeah, that so for me, just so you know, like I think this is one of the reasons why I probably love the work that I do, because I always am trying to think about outside the box because government can't stand in the gap of everything. And so what we've been doing is taking a page out of the mutual aid group work that we did during COVID and we've been working in collaboration with nonprofit organizations and folks who are doing emergency rapid response to help folks stand in the gap. So there are a lot of folks, I always say there are people who have and there are people who have not. And so what we've been doing is really leveraging our networks and identifying folks who want to be part of the safety net supports and leveraging those networks and working with nonprofit organizations to stand in the gap. Because this is one of those situations that it's all hands on deck. And so there's a lot of work that we could be doing with nonprofits and mutual aid groups and folks who have far more means than any of one of us that's here right now. So that's infrastructure that we've been building outside of my capacity as a city councilor. That work is outside of that. But I think that that work also lends itself for piloting that what we can learn and then, replicating more across the city of Boston. I know
Awesome.
that's not the answer that is hopeful, but it is trying to do what we can with the limited resources because we, even as a city, we're feeling the financial crunch, right? There are folks who, we are at a financial crossroads on the federal level, but also here locally, we have a very lean budget this year. And so we're grappling with all of that. And so just managing all of our expectations and really tapping into folks who can help support the work so that everybody's participating in what this moment is calling for.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the chat. Ashley, you said making a resource sheet feels like recreating the wheel. There seems to be a lot of information sheets like that around. I don't want to call you out, but do you have any like ideas around how we can either make this one different, but then also just make it, I don't want to say better either. That doesn't sound right, but make it more impactful, so to speak. And you don't have to answer this now if you don't want to,
Oh no,
but
I'm fine
just,
answering it. I mean, I personally I don't think I'd still advocate for the creation of a resource sheet. So I don't think I could provide any way of like making it better per se. I would say, if anything, focus on like sharing out and uplifting the resource like materials that already exist. But then on the other side, I really like what Councilor Mejia was saying in just terms of like creating access points for people to engage in mutual aid. Um, I think it could be a good way of like if we were to create a resource sheet, maybe like creating a sheet that demonstrates to people how they can support their community members in need. And like creating kind of a tiered system. It could be like what it looks like for a corporation to provide support to like people who are facing housing insecurity from a like university level type nonprofit or a hospital nonprofit. Like what can you all do at your tiers to support our housing insecure, and then even going down like a level of like what does it look like for an individual to support. So less like providing like information around like here's the available resources. Like I said, I think those like exist, but maybe giving more of a toolkit of like what can engagement look like from you.
See, this is why I love coming to these task force meetings because I get inspired by thought. And again, the people who are out, in these streets, like I always like to say in the district, because we have representation, Danielle, just so you know, there's 9 districts and we usually have members from all across the city. We just have a light turnout tonight. But Ashley, to your point, what this particular group can potentially do is from a district standpoint is identifying is those activations, right? Who are the supermarkets in that area? Who are the folks who potentially want to kind of like pilot something? It's like they have these community hub schools and using that model for community supports like mutual aid, but like what we just talked about was more like corporate and who are the people who are doing business in these neighborhoods that can help support the immediate needs of the folks who live in this neighborhood. that could be something that we can test out in some of the higher need areas. And our task force members who may not live in high need areas have access to folks who potentially could participate, and that we're all building upon the collective power of this group here, right? Like everyone is doing something. And I think that that's a smaller project that we can do as a result of answering the question that Dylan proposed, and also Christine, about kind of like the federal government and the financial crunch that we're going to find ourselves in calls for more community-centered approaches to respond. And so, Kiara, maybe that's something that we can, in our next short-term and long-term groups, just unpack a little bit as a service project.
Mhm.
Not that y'all need any more work to do, Ashley, or and Charlie and Dylan and Norm and everybody else who's still here. But I just think, I love this because it gives us an opportunity to think outside of the box. And I see Danielle shaking your head, and you got your hand up. So I'm going to kick it back to you.
No, I too love conversations like this, which is obviously I love Counselor Mejia, but also appreciate these types of engagement sessions because it gives me motivation of like, oh, we can think of that. But I'm happy to share this link. Boston Public Health Commission put together this great resource packet of, well, how do you think about community engagement, understanding that Boston is very diverse. Some communications work better for some than others. And it really does a really good deep dive into like steps of thinking about community engagement. And that's something that I've been thinking about from my perspective of, I think it was Ashley who mentioned, well, how do people even know about the Office of Housing Stability? And, city, we are very resource heavy, but we don't do a good enough job of connecting with community. So using this guide as a way to think, okay, let's think of a communications plan, not for all of the city of Boston, but what is a communication plan in Hyde Park look like compared to a communication plan in West Roxbury? I raised West Roxbury because I live there. And then thinking through, okay, we have this communication strategy, but what are some standards of practice, right? So like, how do we think about different programs and departments and other entities that exist in these neighborhoods that we could potentially latch on? And from what I'm hearing, you all have named a few of, maybe there's a local bodega, maybe there is a religious organization that we can think of. And then from there, sort of building on, okay, we've connected with this church, we've connected with this religious space. How do we build more conversation with that community? So it's definitely giving me something to think about as we within the Office of Housing Stability, but also the Mayor's Office of Housing make a more concerted effort to let people know about our services because our website has all of the information. And that's a lot of times where go look at our website, it has everything that you need. And maybe it was Christina who mentioned it as well of, well, not everybody uses the internet. And yes, it's got all of the languages, the major languages that are spoken within the city, but is that accessible for people? So I just wanted to raise that because I think it's a great conversation and something that we're actively thinking about, but happy to share that resource as it relates to community engagement that I think would be helpful for you all. So thank you for raising and letting me stick around. I appreciate it.
Of course, thank you so much. And we will be wrapping up our long-term conversation with Christina's question from the chat. Has anyone looked into working with existing local grocery stores to help subsidize? Wow, I'm so sorry. To help subsidize and fill the void of nonprofit grocery stores prices of the daily table. So this was something that I know that you all have mentioned, but does anyone have any comments? I can't personally answer this because I don't know if anyone has looked into working with these grocery stores, but I know that is something that we had just mentioned, and I believe we've mentioned in past meetings as well. Just creating some sort of like partnership with local grocery stores and supermarkets in the area and then try to figure out how we can bring these prices down so that no one is feeling like no one is food insecure, so to speak.
I just shared in the chat an article that it came out, I think, a couple weeks ago. But there's a group of students who did a cost comparison of Stop and Shop prices. So I'm wondering, Christina, if there's opportunity to engage with that group to see how they did their methodology, and maybe they have some ideas of this is one way that we were thinking of um, addressing the disparate impacts of high cost in JP versus or low cost in JP versus in Roxbury, et cetera. So just a thought.
You for sharing that. And if no one else has any more questions or comments, I think we will move on to our short-term team. So now I'm going to, give me one second. A quick reminder of what the short-term team was talking about. Oh, wrong side. Okay, here. This was the last, these are the main bullet, oh gosh. Yeah, these are the main bullet points from what the short-term team was talking about last, and I will momentarily put the link in the chat for problem intersections, but this was something that um, you all were interested in talking about. And I will bring this slide right back up, but this was shared from one of the task force members with me, and she wanted me to share it with you all as well. So I know that rent control was something that the long-term team was going to focus on, but specifically for the short-term team, it's street and pedestrian safety and then also just overall maintenance. And specifically for sidewalk maintenance, oh no, sorry, for street safety, there are the pictures and videos that are on the folder that again I will share momentarily. They show like there was even one video where there was a bus that almost hit the person who was taking the video because it was just speeding and did not stop for the pedestrian at the crosswalk as they're supposed to. But in addition to that part of it, there's also the fact that some bike lanes just aren't working in some places as they were intended to, or just as the city might have hoped that it would work. And there are again pictures of that, and I can also share what some of those task force members had shared with me, and I can highlight that. Um, and this is specifically about the budget. I will share these slides with you so you can look through them, but let me share this really quickly with you guys. While I share this, does anyone have anything that they want to like comment about when it comes to um sorry, I'm not great with multitasking, but right around the short-term issues that we've been talking about. So, well, thank you, Danielle. We specifically had talked about earlier creating some like pamphlet and distributing it so everyone knows the laws that are already on the books relating to what the noise levels are, um, just laws for mopeds and bikes and overall not speeding, sorry, car laws as well, and what they're supposed to do, like stopping for pedestrians, for example. And then it was also mentioned to create a community-centered pilot program that dealt with some of these concerns. So these would be people like flaggers or just no civilian flaggers was what we had called it, but someone who looked official that could stand at intersections that were problematic and are pointed out in that folder that I shared, and just make like be a presence in the community so that people would be forced almost to slow down and just follow the laws that are on the books. So that was what we had talked about. And I don't want to call you all out, but I will. Norm, Dylan, and I don't think Charlie's with us right now, but you all are in the short-term team. Is there anything that you would like to highlight from the last time that we had met, or something that you just want to bring up?
Yeah, thank you, Cara. I think that
Oh, Kiara, I think you're cutting in and out. Yeah, Norm. We're gonna go to Norm. I think we lost Kiara. Kiara, maybe you may want to go off camera. Sorry.
that's right.
Norm, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. So yes, the short-term group has been very focused, particularly on pedestrian safety. I think that's been the number one issue. So, been a lot of discussions about how we can make crosswalks safer, how we can make sure that anyone that is a pedestrian is able to navigate Boston streets safely, and how do we control bad behavior by automotive traffic and also by bike lane traffic, which isn't just bicycles. It's scooters, it's mopeds, it's all kinds of different things. It's, food delivery services. They're trying to get as fast as they can to any other place that they need to be, because that's how they get paid. So how do we control that? And a offshoot of that is um, how do we control double parking that exists all through the city, which not only slows traffic, but endangers pedestrians, because oftentimes the drivers and pedestrians cannot see each other around double parked vehicles. So that's been the center of our conversation and how we can improve on that. And not unexpectedly, all of these come down to enforcement. How can we better enable the police and the parking enforcement department to enforce the rules that exist today and control what happens throughout Boston, and in some ways seems to just be accepted within Boston. So that's been a lot of our discussion, and that's what we've centered on and trying to come up with solutions for. So that's a bit of a summary of what our conversations have been.
Yes, thank you, Norm. Just as Counselor Mejia said, thank you.
And Kiara, if I just you and Julia, just one thing, our group has continued to shrink a little bit here. We're not getting as many people as used to be. Um, I've talked to a lot of people, reached out to a lot of people in the short-term group, trying to figure out, what the team is, what we need to be. So I'm going to throw the question back on the two of you. Of been a lot of great ideas from the long-term group, we think, great ideas from the short-term group. What is the end goal? Where is it that the task force is leading, and how can we actually produce change?
Yeah.
So, Councilor Mejia, I'll leave that to you, because ultimately you are the decision maker.
Yeah.
So thank you.
We this is called co-governance, Norm. So we're doing this together, right? And we want to go at the rate of speed of urgency, but also understanding that we have to bring people along the journey. And so what we're hoping to do, in at least in this season that we're in right now, is to utilize what we've heard in both the short term and long term, and identify where are the spaces and places within the budget season that we can actually advocate for some of the things that we're talking about here, so that we can start seeing some traction, right? So utilizing what we've learned here, to offer amendments around some of the street pedestrian safety issues that have bubbled up to the top, some of the trash collection situations that we've heard from the North End. We also, I'm not sure if Norm, if you were in, because I keep confusing both of the task forces, but in one of those meetings, I'm not sure which one it was, but we talked about creating a pilot program, like a workforce development initiative for young people to enter the city of Boston's workforce through the civilian. There is a proposal already, a civilian flaggers initiative, but how do we build something more hyper local and doing something where we can pilot and looking at some of the intersections that are the highest need and identifying ways that we can pour some direct resources there to pilot something smaller that we can replicate. I just want you to know kind of like those are the sort of things that we've been inspired by and utilizing the budget season to identify some specific wins that we could potentially get through the advocacy that we've been hearing in this space. On a short term, some of these things are a lot easier than what the long term has been talking about because those things are structural and, you know, curing hunger and how the homeless, the housing crisis is a lot. But the work that you all have been doing has really led us to some things that we can potentially push on the city council. And then one of the last things that we wanted to do in our time together is virtual is all good, but we would love to, as the weather gets nicer, is to do some of these neighborhood community walks with the entire task force so that we get to see what people have been experiencing in their immediate area so that when we can file a hearing order, right, people can come in and testify and they can testify from a lived experience because they've seen it and done it and can articulate it regardless of whether or not they live in that district. And that's the other piece of the strategy in terms of having this be a citywide task force is because what we want to do is find common themes that it doesn't matter where in the city of Boston you live. There are things that we can all agree that we need to fight for. And we're still in our norming, storming, and conforming stages of relationship development, right? And so I also want to acknowledge that we're on that journey and we haven't really met in person. And I think that from a community organizing standpoint, the where do we go from here really is going to start when we are meeting in person. But some of the things that have come up between the last, I think we started when did we start? In January or
December.
September?
Yeah, I
December,
believe it
yeah.
was December.
Yeah, so we've been at this for 6 months. The majority of the time has been virtual. So within the last 6 months, we've walked away with some very specific things that we could pursue. And now we're in the stages of like, how do we start to implement those things? But we want to do that in partnership with the task force. And so I hope that kind of provides a framework of
Yeah,
kind of like we've been moving.
super helpful and really frames it nicely. So yes, thank you. Gives us marching orders going forward. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yes. And then the most important part, Norm, is that we want to meet in person and we want to do some team building. I know that sounds wonky. I don't know how people feel about those things, but this work is the long game. And I think that the relationship building of the work oftentimes is the most important part of the process because we have to build those trusting relationships and we have to know that we have each other's back. And I don't think that we have done that in this time together because of the dynamics of being on Zoom. And so yes, Ashley, you love a social worker. So team building, yes, I know. I'm looking at the long game. I see us on a journey that is longer than just the 1 year anniversary. My hope is that by the time December hits, that we can have some wins that we can point to.
Thank you. And yeah, I just want to echo what you're saying. Oftentimes it feels as though all of us as neighborhood advocates are in competition with each other. And I love the fact you're trying to bring us all together and say, there are citywide initiatives that we can all share in. So let's all fight and work towards those and see what we can accomplish. So that's yeah, thank you.
That's the vision. And we're making it up as we go. In full disclosure, right? So I want to be honest. We are organic. As you could see, you all have really set the stage. Everything that you have brought here, it has been under everyone's leadership here, right? So we didn't come in with an agenda. This is what we're going to do. These are the items that we're going to fight for. We came under a common ground of things that we knew that we had issues of quality of life. But just the fact that you all have been able to come up with committees and come up with issues, that has all been part of the norming and the storming and the conforming process. Like, you guys have done that work collectively, and we are onto something here.
Thank you.
And my hope is that we continue to do that.
Thank you.
So thank you for asking.
As kind as your words are, as I do, so much of the credit goes to Kiara because she has held the group together. She's driven us forward. She's kept us on task, kept us moving forward, and divided us up into tasks that are doable. And she's been tremendous. So
I know. Can I just say one thing before we go to Dylan about Kiara? I met Kiara. She was a young person. She was in high school, y'all. She was my youth.
She's still a young person.
I know, but she was like a really young person last year because she was still in high school. And every time I would see her in these community meetings, I'm like, oh, look at this young person really paying attention. And she was consistent. And I go everywhere. And I saw her. And then we hired her as our youth intern. And here she is developing this amazing citywide task force. And she does, look, full disclosure, she does the agenda. She created the Google Doc. She does the maintenance. Like, I just show up and I'm like, I'm the filibuster of the family because Kiara has it all on lock. And so I just want you to know, like, if this is what she's doing and this is her capacity entering her career, just imagine, you know, how she's going to continue to flourish as she continues to grow. And this has all been very instinctually in under her leadership with everything that you all have experienced.
We all expect big things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the path is on the right way. So Kiara,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
Yeah.
all. Thank you. But
Dylan, I see you have your hand up, Dylan.
Thanks.
Sorry.
I too am Team Kiara. And I also wanted to build on what Norm was saying because we have talked a lot about pedestrian safety in the short-term group, and in addition to enforcement, we've talked about just how tapped out law enforcement is. And also how sometimes increasing the number of encounters between law enforcement officials and residents is not always a win. So we've discussed a lot of other ways that driver behavior in particular can be changed to improve pedestrian safety, and especially the kind of hard features of the road about how when you eliminate a lane of traffic, you immediately improve pedestrian safety because you don't have one car blocking the view of a pedestrian who's crossing, and then another car hits the pedestrian. And that whenever there's a mobility lane that is separated with any kind of like a quick build structure is like nice, or like the harder the structure there, the more layers of protection you have for between pedestrians and the like massive multi-ton vehicles that could really hurt or kill them. So I thought that was something that was worth highlighting from all of our talks. Also, speed bumps. Lots of fans of speed bumps.
See, and this is why I love my district Washingtons, because different speed bumps from different folks in different neighborhoods would rather they did not exist. And so this is why I love group consensus building, because the city is the city as a whole. And I think I'm really happy that the mayor is really looking at kind of looking looking at what is working and what is not, because I think that an American Legion Highway, and the, I hear from a lot of folks who live off of that area that they're not really it, they don't like it. I don't know how else to say it. They don't like it, they don't want it. And so we want to our posture has always been, we don't want it to be bikes versus cars and people versus red lights. Like, we want to be able to coexist together, and that is the goal. And how do we do that? And to Norm's point, and I think Dylan, you also mentioned it, every neighborhood is unique in terms of what they need. And I think that that's the framework that we're trying to, you know, the framework that we're trying to use here is like, we don't want to make blanket decisions for everyone, because how Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan feel about even the way we respond to the the mopeds who are running around here is very different than how folks in Back Bay and Beacon Hill want us to deal with it. So like, we are really trying to hold space for different ways of getting to where we need to be, and recognizing, and I'll say this, and yeah, oh, I'm not even on camera, sorry. And I'll say this is that for me, I think I always like to think about it, this work is that government and law enforcement can just do so much. There also has to be a level of accountability when it comes to the 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 community, like the folks who are driving, um the people who are riding their bike. Like, everyone here needs to see the role that they play. And until we start having those conversations that bring those folks in, then we're not going to change the unfortunately, we're not going to change the hearts and minds of those folks who potentially are causing harm. And that's why some of our work has been outside of this task force, really trying to engage some of the young people who are riding around in their mopeds, because we're trying to cultivate those relationships with them so that they can see how they're how that is unsafe, not just for them, but also the people who are sharing the road with them, right? So that level of education is also something that we've been doing outside of this task force, but just through a youth development engagement lens, and getting people engaged in that accountability. It's all about accountability, and we're all accountable. But yeah.
And on that note, I believe in a oh my God, my internet. Can you all hear me, or am I cutting out again? Okay, perfect. Okay. So on that note, I believe that it was mentioned uh, in one of our past meetings about bringing in the cadets from the cadet program. Obviously, this isn't something that is fully fleshed out, but having cadets being these civilian flaggers that go out and are a presence in the community, that was something that was mentioned. So, just want to highlight that out again so that we all, in case you forgot about it. Oh, yes, and thank you so much, Danielle. Oh, she left. But thank you to Danielle for
Okay, that's what
everything.
I'm doing. Sorry, Kara, I spoke over you.
Oh, no, that was done. Sorry.
Yeah. All right, so it's 9 o'clock. If you all, I think if it's okay, maybe we could talk a little bit. We since you're here, you get to decide. I mean, we might do a little poll for those who are not here. I don't know. But we were thinking about taking a break during the summer, and we were thinking of doing one meetup in person together before we go on summer break. And then we were thinking of taking August and September, kind of like, because a lot of folks are away for August, and folks who are dealing with back to school or sending their kids off, like, everyone's all over the place for August and September. So we were thinking that we can reconvene in October, but to do one thing together, um, either in June or July, that you all can pick your adventure. If you want to do it in June or you want to do it in July, we want to give you all the option. And since you're here, we'll give you all first dibs. June or July?
I say July.
Okay. Norm,
For our get
Dylan?
together, for our get together, is that what you're
Yeah,
asking?
in person. Yeah,
Yeah, I'll go with Ashley. July's good. Good. Yes.
Yeah, I'll
July.
go with July as well. That
All
makes
right.
the most sense.
Dylan, July? July works. Well, here's what happens when you show up. You get to decide what we do next. So we're
Yes.
gonna go with July.
All right.
And we're gonna pick a day that is available. We're gonna most likely do it at the Bruce Bowling Building because we see the Bruce Bowling Building kind of like it's a little bit, it's in the middle of the city per se, and also they have a rooftop. And I would love to use the rooftop. It's a beautiful skyline. If you haven't been, it's such a beautiful treat. And I'd love for you all to experience that. And we'll have a dinner. And we'll do some activities and it'll be fun. It'll be
That's
fun.
awesome. Yes. Yes.
Okay, good. It'll be fun. And it's accessible and all that good stuff so that we can all show up for each other. Um, yeah, so we're gonna pick July. Um, all right, so then July it is. Kiara will work with Julissa to pick the date in July, and most likely it will be after July 12th because for folks who go away for the long weekend because of the 4th of July, so most people will be back. So after July 12th.
I have a quick question for everyone who is here. How can I help engage more people? Because I know, Norm, that you did mention that our group is shrinking a little bit. How can I help unshrink the group? What's the best way to connect with you guys? And you don't, I don't
I'll
mean
give you
that
my opinion.
specifically for you, but
The
anyone who
best
wants
way
to
to
answer.
unshrink the group, the best way to unshrink the group, a good way of saying it, as far as I believe, is to give a clear picture, just as Councillor Mahia did, of what we are doing going forward. What is our goal? What are we trying to reach, and how will we be effective? If people have a goal and they believe that we will be effective and that we are doing something that will have lasting effect, whether it be I hate the term white paper, but some kind of a document that lives on, both from a short-term and long-term perspective, that the counselor and others can use going forward to say, this is what this team has come up with. This is the solution that we reached on a citywide basis. That would be super helpful because I think that some people I've spoken with have been frustrated thinking that we're having great conversations, but they don't really know what the end goal is and what it is they're working for, and if they're really going to have an impact and what their time is being spent on. So if you can anything you could do to add clarity to that, to say, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to produce, this is the impact it will have, and you are an important part of that, that will, I believe, have tremendous impetus for people to be involved, stay involved, and get more involved. That's my opinion.
I love that. And like I said with Ashley earlier, like I'm an ideas person. I am already thinking, you know what, Norm? I think also what would be good is for us to be able to codify this task force into something that lives outside of our space and really becomes part of the mayor, like an official voice on the, like I created the Black Men and Boys Commission. Um, and that commission now is an entire department. The Office of Black Male Advancement with a budget of $1.8 million. Okay.
Yeah.
So the reason why I share that is that I think that if we could produce some things as to what just kind of like some very specific small wins and demonstrate the power of what this has been, our office could file an ordinance and establish a formal quality of life commission that advises the city council and the mayor on all issues of quality of life as they continue to evolve. Because right now it's pedestrian safety, but there's we're living in a time where we just never know what else is going to come down the pipeline. But if there was a body of folks who have a formal voice, that maybe we could, like, you all do audits like twice a year on very specific quality of life issues that relate to the city, and that audit turns into, here's some recommended outcomes, and becomes policy. I think that is also a very specific outcome that can come of our time together. Um, and I'm inspired by kind of like formalizing this body as an official voice for the city.
And if there's any way you can formally involve Mayor Wu's efforts within it, either by getting ONS involved, who I think most of us have been very involved with. I mean, I think the world of ONS, I think they've been so involved with neighborhoods and what we do. If they can get involved, and Mayor Wu's department's involved, then suddenly we have Boston Streets involved, we have BPD involved on a more formal basis, because she is their head, along with the councilors. If all that force can be brought to this, then it becomes a citywide effort that really has a lot of recognition. And if we get more buy-in from the mayor and all the councilors, then suddenly it becomes something very powerful.
Yeah. We did something similar like that with Mayor Walsh during the fireworks. We created a citywide task force that the mayor of then Mayor Walsh adopted, and really had his whole entire team go all in with us. And so that's the same way that I'm thinking for this, but to codify it into the city charter as an official body, that regardless of who is the person in power, that we have members of all the different departments that you've mentioned, along with community, a representative from each district. I think that could be a really powerful task force that really can help support the city, the city council and the administration on some of these quality of life issues. And Kiara, maybe that could be maybe in our year anniversary, Norm, between now and then, we can start drafting up what is the creation of this formal commission that we can file in December as a very specific outcome of our time together.
That's great. I love that. Brilliant. That'd be a great way to institutionalize everything we're doing here, and I think would empower the people within the group, and encourage people to get involved, stay involved, and be even more involved.
Yeah. Ashley, you like this idea too? I see you smiling over there. Or maybe you're reading a text message. I don't know, but I see you smiling. You like the idea of formalizing what we're doing?
I do, and I also have my cat who's been getting restless, and he's been looking up at me like, "What's your problem? Why are you still talking to people?"
Yeah. Okay, that's what it was. I knew you were smiling. I thought you were reading a text, but I see you were smiling at your kitty. Okay. All right. So listen, I don't want to. So I think that I love. I get really super inspired by people. So I want you all to know that this is a space, and I'm glad that Kiara asked what we could do to better engage with you all, because this gave us some real teeth in terms of the conversation. And I think we can re-engage some folks, and maybe from some of the districts that we're missing, maybe we could do another call for folks, so that the short-term folks are not all by themselves, right? So we can get you some reinforcements, Norm. So if you have friends or colleagues that live in different areas that you want to engage in this work, make some recommendations, and we're more than happy to. We are in our infancy stage. Like, we're still very much in the growing stages, so that we can scaffold this and bring in a few more people.
Great.
So,
thank you.
And recommendations, if you guys have folks. And Kiara, share with the team, we want representation from the entire city. And while we divided into two different groups, I personally think we can do it all. And I think that that is also where the power lies, is working the long-term folks working alongside the short term on some of the smaller wins while we're also tackling the bigger issues. I think those things could also be part of our time together, that we're really recognizing that we are a citywide task force as a whole, and that our collective power can support each other in some way. So that's maybe another thing that we might consider rethinking, is like, instead of dividing us up, I mean, that we're just like, I like when I say, oh, I'm making this up as I go, like we really are. But like, maybe we could revisit. Do we want to be in community with each other the way we started off? Because I thought there was a lot of momentum growing there. Like, we don't have to make those decisions today, but it's something worth exploring when we get together as a group.
Yeah. If I could gently push back on that, I think there
Yeah.
has been a lot of really good progress within the individual groups, like the short-term groups, long-term group. We have focus. I was
Okay.
kind of thinking the opposite. I was thinking that if, as you suggest to me, we grow it and more people interested, more people involved, you could even increase the number of groups. Maybe there's just one concerned about pedestrian safety. Maybe there's one just concerned about enforcement. Maybe there's one just concerned about housing itself. Maybe there's one concerned about accessibility and equity. There could be all kinds of different groups that could come up with tremendous ideas as a small think tank, and then bubble those up to a larger group to have those discussions. But I'll leave that to Kiara and her creative mind to come up with how we might divide and conquer, and whatever you guys think is best, I'm all for it.
Yeah, no, I love that. And maybe we can give some thought to, maybe we can spend, maybe that our July gathering can really be infrastructure brainstorming and kind of like coming up with a model. Maybe everybody can, Karen, when you send out the email and the link, maybe encourage people for our July gathering, once we have the date set, is that people can come, to that with some ideas of how we can grow this and expand it. And I also think that we had a lot of people who applied to be part of the task force, that you all could potentially have sessions where you're opening it up to a larger group of people who may not be, official task force members, but that they're I wouldn't say workshops, but there are like many sessions that you all are hosting for a larger cohort of people who are not part of the task force but care about the issue that you're tackling. And maybe that could be a recruitment tactic to build more infrastructure for that issue that you all are leading.
Yes, great.
Yeah,
great,
yeah.
community listening sessions. Yes, very good.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Perfect.
That'd be a great topic for dinner in July.
Yeah, perfect. All right,
Thank
because
you.
I'll be here till tomorrow talking. Y'all don't want that. I don't want Ashley's cat to get mad at me, because I need all my constituents to be happy, so including our pets. So I think, Kiara, I think we have a good framework for our next steps, right? We got the July coming down the pipeline. We have some questions that we want to ask everyone to come ready to dialogue with. You'll work with Julissa to find a date in July that we can gather. It most likely will be in the evening. Um, and I really love the idea of formalizing the voice of this task force alongside the city, and bringing in some of those ex officio members that will help build out the work that the task force members would do. I'm excited.
Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you all.
I'm gonna kick it back to you, Kiara, before I keep talking, because I will talk more. And I want to say thank you to everybody. I'll give it back to you, Kiara, because I talk a lot.
No, I just want to echo that. Thank you. I don't think you can see it there, but I've been taking notes of everything. So I have my little one pager here. And then, of course, I'll be taking notes and adding it to that document. And I'll be sharing all of that very soon with you guys. But I just want to say thank you. And I think I'm cutting out
Thank you.
again, but
Have a
thank
great
you.
night.
Yes, thank
Thank
you.
you,
Have a
everybody.
great night.
Yes. Thank you
Bye.
for all of your thought leadership. We really appreciate it. Have a beautiful night.